This video might end up looking a little bit different than some of my past reviews. Previously, when I would edit these videos, I would basically cut out any bit of empty space that I could find when I was going back and rewatching the video in Premiere, so it would end up sounding like I was just rapid firing off a bunch of words at record pace. But starting with this video, I'm only going to be cutting out the biggest empty space, so it's not going to be quite as jump cutty as usual, or rather, the jump cuts might not seem as quick as before. I did this a little bit in my last video, and I'm going to keep going with it because one, it'll make what I'm saying sound a lot clearer, but also it'll just be easier for me to edit. I won't have to be anal about cutting out as much as possible to shorten the video length. So I think this will be a beneficial change for future videos, and personally I'm pretty excited about it. Now that that's out of the way, welcome back to another multi-album review, and holy shit, who told everyone to drop this much music? It's list season. It's year-end list season, but apparently 3 artists decided to drop albums all in the same weekend. Well, I couldn't just not cover them, so here we are. And as you can tell from the title, these are the 3 albums that I'm going to be covering this week. We have the debut Jack Harlow album, That's What They All Say, the newest Taylor Swift album, Evermore, and the new Kid Cudi album, Man on the Moon 3, The Chosen. Initially, I thought I was only going to be covering Jack Harlow's album. I mentioned in my last review that that was going to be the next album that I would cover, and I thought that would be it for 2020, but instead, Kid Cudi decided to announce that he was going to be releasing Man on the Moon 3, and I knew I couldn't miss out on that. And then, the night before its release, Taylor Swift announced that she was going to be releasing another album, so once again, I couldn't not cover it. So here we go. It looks like to end off 2020, I'm going to be covering 3 albums at once. Multi-album reviews were a new thing I really introduced to this channel this year. Looks like that's how I'm ending the year. Fortunately though, it's a good weekend for music. I have a lot of pretty positive things to say in this video, and it's nice to get to end the year off with some pretty good projects. So now that I've blabbered long enough and hopefully got a good thumbnail with these albums in it, let's jump right in. First off, let's talk about the new Jack Harlow album, That's What They All Say. Jack Harlow is a rapper from Kentucky who blew up this year off of his very viral single, What's Poppin'. He got to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 thanks to a prominent remix as well. I love the original song, but I didn't really care for the remix, and I thought it would have been better if it was just Jack and DaBaby. The Tory and Lil Wayne features felt pretty pointless, but I'm glad the original is included alongside the remix on the record, and I was interested in the album as a whole. Going into it, Jack's music seemed to be just goofy, fun, and upbeat, and I could get behind that. The album is 15 tracks in 42 minutes, which isn't too bad, but my overall feelings on this record are pretty mixed. I mentioned that I was expecting Jack to come through with this goofy blend of turn-up jams, but to my surprise there was a lot more here that was more mellow and R&B flavored. Tracks like 21C Delta and Funny Seeing You Here, for example, gave me this impression that Jack was trying to make his own Drake songs, and cuts like Rendezvous, the aforementioned Funny Seeing You Here, and Baxter Avenue have the feel of Drake's more introspective one-verse cuts that he often ends albums with. There are also a few points in the record, like on Way Out and Creme, where Jack's vocal inflection kind of reminded me a bit of Juice WRLD. The latter kind of sounds like a straight attempt at making a Juice WRLD song, and it gave me a bit of an impression that he's still not all that sure of his sound yet. Really, the best tracks on here are the ones where Jack combines a catchy hook and fun flows with interesting production, like the singles What's Poppin' and Tyler Harrow, but it feels like that doesn't happen often. It's not that many of the beats on here are particularly bad, they just don't stand out all that much. And outside of the aforementioned highlights, Jack doesn't really come through with super catchy choruses. He still has a decent presence on a few tracks, but I felt like I was wishing for more. Also, after hearing a track like What's Poppin', I was kind of expecting more bold lyricism too. Not that I was expecting Jack to suddenly become a spiritual, lyrical, miracle individual or anything like that, but he reads to me as someone that's really funny and goofy, and his lyricism was disappointingly unenthusiastic. Tracks like Keep It Light see him trying for something a bit more introspective, but his writing just doesn't grab me all that much. And while this is a star-studded record, the features are mostly forgettable to me. Outside of Big Sean's verse on Way Out and Chris Brown's performance on Already Best Friends, there's not a whole lot to remember out of these guest appearances. Lil Baby's verse on Face of My City was pretty underwhelming. The auto-tune was way too heavy. Adam Levine's appearance on Some Guy was a complete waste that just kind of sounds like Adam coming in for the check. No real rhyme or reason as to why he should have been here. Route 66 features a forgettable verse from ESTG. It just kind of goes in one ear and out the other. And Love Is Dro is a complete waste of a Static Major sample where Bryson Tiller pretty much runs circles around Jack Harlow. Not that Bryson's performance is one of his best, but at least he sounds more game for this than Jack does. Yeah, there are definitely a few highlights on this thing and a number of tracks I can return to, but otherwise I think Jack's debut album doesn't really capitalize on the success that What's Poppin' had. It's not bad, but it's clear to me Jack hasn't found his voice or sound yet, and outside of a few decent tracks, there's no real reason to listen to this record in its entirety. On my rating scale, I'd probably say Jack Harlow's That's What They All Say is gonna get an okay rating from me. Not great, not terrible, not nearly as poppin' as some of the viral singles might have led you to believe. believe. Next up, I'm going to be talking about the new Taylor Swift album, Evermore. Very quickly following the release of her excellent album Folklore that dropped in July, Taylor Swift is back with her 9th studio album, one that she is dubbing as a sister album to Folklore. Much like that album, this one was also surprise released. We only really learned about it the day before it dropped, but now it's here. And I know there's a deluxe edition, but Spotify only had the regular one, so this will be a review of that. The album is 15 tracks and an hour long, which is roughly similar in length to Folklore, and it's pretty much as good as that record. Honestly, I'd even go as far as to say it's potentially better. As Taylor made clear, this sister album to Folklore tackles a lot of the same sonic ideas that album brought forth, sticking mostly into indie pop and folk sounds. Taylor's proven that she's built for these styles though, and what comes of it is some of her most emotional tracks yet. It's also great to see that even with a big style change, Taylor still has a knack for putting together catchy hooks, like on the song Willow or the song Champagne Problems, which is easily one of the most beautiful tracks here. It has these gentle pianos and smooth vocals that remind me of a track like New Year's Day from Reputation. Tracks like Gold Rush, Cowboy Like Me, and Happiness are heavenly. The latter has some of Taylor's most broken sounding vocals yet. The songs Tis the Damn Season, Dorothea, and Ivy are all mellow, beautiful, relaxed cuts. And there are tracks that are very heart-wrenching like Tolerate It, as well as the subdued Coney Island featuring The National. And even though the focus is on more indie pop and folk leaning songs, Taylor still takes a stylistic risk on a track like Closure, which reads like an industrial leaning song with these drums that feel reminiscent of something Nine Inch Nails would create, but placed between some pretty smooth pianos. It's actually an interesting track that mixes these juxtaposing elements surprisingly well. And I think what further helps this album stand out as a high point for Taylor is the writing. I think that on Folklore, the move away from a more mainstream sound helped to yield some of Taylor's most mature writing and interesting storytelling yet, and this album is no different. No Body, No Crime featuring Haim has some of the best storytelling on the album, telling the tale of a woman named Esty who was killed after confronting her cheating husband. Long Story Short also is a lovely song that sees Taylor finding peace after the drama caused by the Kim and Kanye debacle of 2016. It's a nice moment on the album, and it's sweet to see Taylor having moved on from that pettiness. Marjorie is a tribute to Taylor's late grandmother, Marjorie Finlay, in the same way that Epiphany off of Folklore was a tribute to her grandfather, Dean. For as minimal as it is, it's still a beautiful track that continues to showcase Taylor's songwriting maturity. The true showstopper, though, is the closer to the album, which is the title track Evermore featuring Bon Iver, which is an extremely broken track with an echoing piano that in itself is enough to bring tears to my eyes. The song tackles themes of mental health with some of Taylor's most beautiful vocals, as well as the typically wonderful singing of Justin Vernon from Bon Iver. It's a stellar closer to a stellar album. As it is, Evermore is another amazing record from Taylor Swift, and I think it continues to showcase Taylor's excellence and growth as a vocalist and a writer. I'm not sure who will agree, but I personally found the album to be even better than Folklore, and I'd probably even go as far as to say it's her best work yet. As of recently, Taylor sounds like she is in full creative control, and the result is continued improvement and wonderful music. I've heard rumors that there's going to be a third album in this Folklore series, and regardless of whether or not that's true, I can't wait to see where she goes from here. Yeah, I'm definitely going to say that Taylor Swift's Evermore is going to get an excellent rating from me. Like I said, probably her best work to date, an improvement on an album that was already very good. Give this thing a shot if you haven't already. And last but not least, it's time to take a look at the new Kid Cudi album, Man on the Moon 3: The Chosen. Kid Cudi is back. This is his 7th studio album. Awesome album cover, by the way. Definitely one of my favorite album covers of this year. And it's his first solo record in about 4 years. Most importantly, this is Cudi's first project in his Man on the Moon series in over a decade. The original album, Man on the Moon: The End of Day, is still a record I love. I think it's an album that's had a huge impact on modern day hip hop. And even if Man on the Moon 2: The Legend of Mr. Rager wasn't quite as good, it was still a very enjoyable album. I haven't followed much of Cudi's discography since Man on the Moon 2. I plan to for 10 years later videos in the future, though I've heard his critical standing did fall a lot after that album, as his subsequent projects received reviews that ranged from mixed to downright horrible. There was his Wizard collaboration with Dot the Genius, Indicud, Satellite Flight: The Journey to Mother Moon, the bottoming out point that was Speeding Bullet to Heaven, and then his 2016 album Passion, Pain, and Demon Slain, which released not long after Cudi checked himself into rehab for depression and suicidal urges. Thankfully, he's come out stronger on the other end, and that was never more clear than in 2018 when he released Kids See Ghosts with Kanye West, which went on to become one of the most critically acclaimed records of that year. And he had a few successful non-album collaborations with Travis Scott and Eminem on The Scotts and The Adventures of Moon Man and Slim Shady, respectively. With how much I enjoyed the first 2 Man on the Moon albums, I was excited to listen to Man on the Moon 3, and it seemed to be taking on a similar feel to the first 2, in that it's 18 tracks in just under an hour, while being divided into 4 acts. Act 1 is Return to Madness, Act 2 is The Rager the Menace, Act 3 is Heart of Rose Gold, and Act 4 is Powers. All 4 acts come together nicely though and create an album that may just be Cudi's best in a very long time. Act 1, Return to Madness, feels very much like a party with tracks that are as hazy as they are bombastic, while Beautiful Trip is a nondescript opener. Tequila Shots and Another Day have those more psychedelic vibes and emotional lyrics Cudi is known for, but with a little bit more instrumental punch to them. I especially love the beat switch on She Knows This, and seeing Cudi go so hard on the beat is awesome. Dive also has one of the stickiest choruses on the album, and it's great just how cohesively these tracks feel together in the opening leg of the album. Act 2, The Rager the Menace, is where the album moves away from the party a bit, but still remains consistently strong. Damage goes in a much darker direction with a sung hook from Cudi and lyrics that see him feeling a bit out of control. Heaven on Earth keeps that tone, but has a more tiptoeing instrumental that takes on a more scary vibe. Cudi legitimately sounds like he's out for blood on the track, and it's pretty excellent. Show Up is another track that exists in the same dark sounds as much of what else is on this act, and Skepta's feature verse is pretty excellent, even though I think the posthumous Pop Smoke chorus isn't really all that interesting. Mr. Solo Dolo 3 is a classic Cudi track where he delves deep into his struggles with mental health, addiction, and isolation. Cudi's always been one to be raw and unapologetic in his lyrics, and the song further proves that. I also think the filters on his vocals add to the emotional feel of the song and round out this act nicely. Act 3, Heart of Rose Gold, is where the album slows down and turns into something a bit more nostalgic, and while it's not as strong as the first 2 acts, there's still a lot to like about it. Sad People sees Cudi trying to find some inner peace despite all of the pain he faces, and again, I think Cudi's raw lyricism is what lifts the song so high, as does the mellow feel of the instrumentation. Elsie's Baby Boy Flashback maintains the mellow feel and is built on some more light guitar plucks, and beyond the soft rock vibes, I like the nostalgic feel of the song as Cudi revisits his relationship with his mother Elsie. September 16th is surprisingly produced by Phineas, Billie Eilish's older brother, and it's a lovely ballad dedicated to Cudi's girlfriend Rocky. It's a sweet track, though I think it's one of the few on here that doesn't really have much of a hook to it. Same goes for The Void, even though I like Cudi's lyrics where he talks about doing anything to avoid falling into depression. The chorus here is definitely not one of the strongest on the album, and without much else of a hook, its 5-minute length ends up feeling a bit too long. The third act does end nicely with Lovin' Me, a very good self-love anthem where Cudi trades off with Phoebe Bridgers on a track that's very smooth and light, but nevertheless captivating. And Act 4, Powers, moves back into the carefree vibe of Act 1, and with this section, the album ends as well as it started. The Pale Moonlight almost feels like an interlude, but it makes an impression thanks to the solid mix of banging drums and hazy production, and Cudi riding the beat effortlessly. Even Trippie Redd's appearance on Rockstar Nights is actually good. His sing-rapping flow fits well over the more bouncy beat, and Cudi's flow is equally as strong. Leave it to Kid Cudi to help Trippie Redd actually sound inspired and actually seem like he gives a damn about the music. For the Kids is a little more mellow than the other Act 4 songs, but it's a beautiful, encouraging anthem to remind young people that they're not alone. Cudi's made several sweet songs like this before, and this is yet another great example of one. This would have been a great closer on its own, but Cudi decided to make Lord I Know the finisher, and I'm okay with that. It's a great banger that once again sees Cudi going very hard while being able to appreciate the success and happiness he's found in life. His daughter also delivers a whisper of To Be Continued at the end, hinting at the release of Cudi's next album, Intergalactic. I know that'll be an exciting record, especially after how great this one was. Yep, Kid Cudi reminds us that he's in top form and he comes through with another wonderful album. If there were concerns about his declining critical reception after Man on the Moon 2, Cudi has quelled those fears with a great return to the Man on the Moon chronology. Kids See Ghosts was no fluke either. Cudi is back in his most creative state in a long time, making some of his best music yet. This record might not quite reach the influential highs of the first Man on the Moon album, but it's nevertheless an amazing listen from start to fantastic finish. Definitely gonna say that Kid Cudi's Man on the Moon 3 The Chosen is gonna get an excellent rating from me as well. Happy to see Kid Cudi back, happy to see him making great music, and happy to see that the third Man on the Moon project can stand tall with the first two. So yeah, pretty great week for music, I'd say. Even if not every album I talked about in this video was fantastic, I had a lot of good things to say, and it's nice to get to end off 2020 with some good albums. Of course, this is just my opinion on these records. What did you guys think about them? Did you listen to all of them, some of them, none of them? Which ones did you love? Which ones did you hate? Which ones were you indifferent towards? Whatever your thoughts are on any of these albums that I talked about today, leave them down in the comments. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And if you guys want to support my passion for content creation by subscribing to my OnlyFans, where I create exclusive music review and poetry content for $4.99 a month, the link to that will also be in the description. Again, it's no big deal if you can't or don't want to. I totally understand and I won't beg for it, and I appreciate anyone that is able to. Hopefully, unless any other artists have surprises up their sleeves. I'm pretty sure this video will be my last set of reviews reviews for 2020. At this point, I'm going to be going into year-end list mode and pretty much just getting ready with those videos. I'll still wait to see if any other new albums drop, but regardless, it looks like we're pretty much near the end of 2020 and the year-end lists will be coming soon. So if this is indeed my last set of album reviews for 2020, I just want to say thank you guys for coming along for the ride and for supporting my channel. I'm sure I'm not about to be the only person that will tell you that 2020 was a shitty year, but for as rough as this year was and as difficult as it was for my mental health, you guys helped make it better by being so supportive and kind and leaving great comments and supporting my channel and watching my videos, and I really appreciate it. You guys could be doing anything else right now, but I appreciate that you guys are taking time out of your schedules to support my content and to watch my videos, so thank you guys. It's really greatly appreciated. I hope I can continue to provide great content for you guys to enjoy for many years to come. So as always, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for being there and for supporting my content all throughout 2020. There is still more to come, so stay tuned for that. But until then, I will see you in the next video. Peace. And he had a few successful non-album collaborations this year with Travis Scott and Eminem on The Scotts and The Adventures of Moonman and Shim Slady? Oh god, we went from MSM to Shim Slady. The fuck?